It's Game 7 in 1988 against the Atlanta Hawks. Dominique and Larry Bird, these guys are going off in the fourth quarter. But I do want to get into this series. So, were you surprised that the Hawks were this good and they were challenging you guys and they really put you guys on the ropes?
Not really, Scal. You know, our team, we were banged up a little bit. Our team wasn't what it was like in 1986. And even 87, we had a lot of injuries too. But in 88, we were banged up a little bit. Matter of fact, the great story about this series is I remember before this big game against Dominique that Larry was out shooting. And I was out shooting early at one end of the court. Larry was down at the other end. And I noticed that Larry was down there like shooting left-handed jump hooks from like 12, 15 feet. Now, he made left-handed shots, but I saw him shooting right-handed jump hooks from 12 or 15 feet. And I went down there and go like, what are you doing? He goes, my Achilles tendons are killing me. My step back it won't work tonight. I need that jump hook. And he made some in that game. I mean, it's just unbelievable. That just tells you his confidence and tells you what kind of a player he was, just to have a game plan of what shots he was going to make that night.
Now, you went up against Doc, and you guys are matched up a lot. Obviously, you have your relationship with Doc and all that stuff. What was it like playing against Doc Rivers back in the day?
Well, I mean, that's one reason why I wanted Doc as a coach is, I thought he was a really smart player, but he was very, very competitive, ultra competitive person and player. And Doc was a great athlete as well. And, but, I have all the respect in the world for this team. I mean, Dominique can go any moment like he did in the fourth quarter. We know that he is a very scary player. And, he had those moments against us often. And so, they for sure had the respect of us. Kevin Willis was a good player. And Dominique and Doc Rivers and Spud Webb came off their bench. They were a deep team that could score the ball, and if we weren't at our best, we're in trouble.
Is this uncommon for Larry Bird to take these one-on-one challenges late in the fourth quarter and just go off like that?
No, not really. I mean, this is not that much different than the Atlanta game where he scored his 60, other than the score was much tighter. We didn't really, Larry was hot, and he was feeling it. And so it was just, get the ball to Larry and let him make the read, because if they come double, he's going to make the right play. And the game wasn't that complicated for him, and he made some tough shots. Like I said, some left-handed running hooks, and and again, he wasn't feeling great at that time of the year, at that moment. And to watch him just gut it out and just to will his body to even finish that game, let alone score 20 in the fourth quarter of a Game 7 is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, when you talk to Doc, do you guys ever bring up the controversial block/goaltend that Doc late in the game where they call the goaltend, but he blocked your shot? Does he bring that up?
He brought that up, yeah. I think in our first year together, he brought that up, and I said, no, it's a goaltend. And I did say, though, that, even if they did call it, I still was going to score the basket. I got the rebound and could have laid it back in, but it was pretty close, and you could probably, with instant replay today, it might have been overturned, no doubt.
What was your guys' mindset during this time to take down the almighty Celtics?
Well, the whole series was crazy. Game 1 and 2, the Celtics won by like a combined 80 points. Like, they blew us out. I remember coming back for Game 3 to Atlanta, and the big article in Atlanta Journal was put a fork in them, we're done. And then we win Game 3 and then win Game 4, go into Boston and win Game 5. And that was a great game. I think we took control. We come back in Game 6, and Atlanta wasn't a great basketball town. You've been to Atlanta, and that city was on fire. Like, people were excited. And what people were, you may not remember, that was Casey Jones had already announced that he was retiring. And so there are all these signs, welcome to Casey Jones' retirement party, and the game was a well-played game. The things I remember about Game 6, I'm a point guard, but I felt like I had to score a lot of points in that game. And Dominique scored a lot. But that was one of the few games there was not a lot of help in that game. A lot of other guys didn't score. And then the last play in Game 6 was, Dominique and I were the two guys that scored. I called a timeout, because they knew what we were running. We called another one, and I inbounded the ball to Cliff Livingston, and he was supposed to dribble handoff to either me or Dominique. DJ read it, and he top-sided me. Cliff looked at Dominique, and then Cliff went on his own and shot Cliff's right-handed. He shot a left-handed hook shot to end that game. And I remember walking off the floor. And I remember, back then we flew commercial. There was no private flights back then. So I remember landing in Boston. I don't know, it was late, Scal. And I remember this old lady at the airport. And I'm not exaggerating. She may have been 80. Had her little purse, and she walks up to me. Hey, Rivers, you thought you wasn't coming back, didn't you? I will never forget that. I wish I knew who that lady was.
You've been a part of you coached the LeBron Paul Pierce duel in in 2008. Like, what is it being a part of as a player? Like, how do you maintain your aggressiveness while these two guys are just absolutely putting on a show, and you don't get into a trance of it's Dominique's just going to carry us the rest of the fourth quarter?
Well, it was a game 7, so your intensity was about winning and beating the Celtics, and we played well that game. I'm telling you, we gave that whole game. If you look at the stats in that game, there were very few turnovers, no technical. It was one of the more well-played game 7s maybe in history. When you look at the field, I think Randy Whitman was like 10 for 11. There were some great games, great played individual games in that. But I would say it's the only game other than I remember the Paul Pierce LeBron was that game 7 as well. There was the only other game that I was in the game and I knew, like in the last 5 minutes, you knew this was special. Yeah. Like you don't usually feel that. Usually you're into the focus of the competition. But I was a point guard, and let me tell you something. If there was a 3-on-1 or whatever, Dominique down that last 4 minutes, I was getting the ball to Dominique Wilkins. Like I knew exactly what was going on. I've been around Nick enough to know when he was on fire. And when Nick's on fire, people will never give Nick he was one of the greatest offensive players to ever play our game. He scored in so many ways and was literally unguardable. And I thought Nick took his game to a whole nother level that day. And then Bird matched shot for shot. I remember that last 3-point shot that Bird made. I want to say it was so deep where he shot the ball. And for me, I remember that was a hard one.
Looking back on that duel between Nick and Bird, how do you stay locked in during that time?
Well, you're locked in because you're trying to win. I was competing. Randy was having a great game, and so I thought my job, get the ball to Randy as much as possible, get the ball to Dominique. Down the stretch, it was more get the ball to Dominique. I think in the first quarter, in the first half, I felt like nobody had it going. I shot the ball a lot, I remember, in the first half. For a point guard, maybe almost too much, but when you can sense no one's got it, I'm getting it going. And so I had a big first half, I think. And then I just remember that last play where I think it was Dominique turned the ball over. They threw it out to Danny. I kid Danny to this day about when you look at the gap between where Danny was and where I was, the fact that I could catch Danny, either I was really fast or Danny was really slow. That's what I tell him all the time. So, but I thought I got it. It was an improbable block, but I thought I got it. Honestly, I don't know if we win the game anyway, but that block would at least given us a shot, at least, at trying to take the lead or tie the score.
Dominique, explain to me how are you able to do this against this stifling defense of like Dennis Johnson, known as a lockdown defender? When you say you were in the zone, what does the zone look like for Dominique Wilkins?
Well, they were a great defensive team, but I felt like in that game, no matter what they threw at me, it didn't matter. I was still going to put the pressure on and keep coming and keep coming. Every time I got to lane, there was Parrish, there was Dennis in the lanes, there was Kevin McHale. So they at times built the wall because most of that series, Kevin McHale guarded me that whole series. So he made it tough to score. So I had to get creative. And still, it didn't matter. For me, it was better if I played against a bigger guy who guarded me because the big guy wasn't going to guard me one-on-one. There's no way, but not by himself. And so they did a good job at times of doubling, sending that extra guy. But once I got in that zone, it didn't matter.
So what we heard from Bird is like a lot of things weren't feeling right for him. So he had to switch up his game. Did you notice he was going to more of the running hooks and the jump hooks than he was typically doing with the normal turnarounds?
Man, he was doing a little bit of everything. I don't know really what he was doing in that fourth quarter, but the stuff that he was doing, it was unbelievable, man. I mean, he was throwing left-hand shots, running hooks. His game was at another level. We was trying to match each other's will, and so it was just a game who was going to hit first.
You talked about Larry Bird saying someone's got to lose this game. When did he say that to you? Early in the fourth or late in the fourth?
No, it was late in the fourth quarter. It was probably like, I don't know, 30, 40 seconds to go in the game. I think it was a timeout or we were taking the ball out of the bounds. I can't remember what it was, but I remember him saying that. And he said, you know, we both deserve to win, but somebody got to go home. And, man, to his credit, man, he took the Celtics and put them on his back. And pretty much that was it. I mean, that was one of the greatest performances I've seen from a guy in those circumstances. Because you're talking about seventh game in the playoffs. To carry his team the way he did in that fourth quarter. And I remember, you know, never forget this. Kevin Willis, we were coming down the court in the third quarter, and he reached over in Bird's chest and said, "Don't let this so-and-so score no more tonight." And I looked at Kevin, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You don't want to awaken a sleeping giant. He got 12 points. Don't wake him up. And I remember sitting down before the fourth quarter, and I'm watching the game, and he gets hot. And I remember Coach said, "All right, Nick, go in there and slow him down." I said, "Slow him down? He's hot now. Ain't nothing I can do. Only thing I can do is match him bucket for bucket." And that's what turned out one of the greatest fourth quarters ever.
You know, going to Doc Rivers, we had him on, and he fouled out of this game, and the Boston Celtic crowd gave him a standing ovation. Did you recognize that at the time? It wasn't because he was fouled out. They just never seen a player like what he saw from you and Doc.
That was the Celtics' appreciation of great basketball. The one thing I say about the Celtics fans, they're the most knowledgeable basketball fans probably in the NBA. And for them to show the appreciation for Doc after fouling out, you're talking the seventh game on there. I mean, that was an incredible ovation, but it was well deserved because Doc Rivers had a hell of a game.